Welcome to another episode of Behind the Song. This episode is on my song Unstoppable that was released in September of last year. I started this song in February. It was like right before Valentine's Day. I made this beat at home in my living room studio on my iMac. It was the day after a mixed tennis practice. So for those of you who don't know, I love tennis. Right now, my two greatest passions are, well, my three greatest passions are probably music, tennis, and food, and throw technology in there, which I use for the music, and also tennis actually lately. Okay, now I'm just going off track. So I play in a tennis league here in Los Angeles as part of the USTA in the local league here, and I've joined the team for about a little under 2 years now, and I just love it. It's really reignited my love of the sport. I used to play in middle school and high school on the varsity team, but as an adult I didn't really play much, just here and there with friends randomly. It wasn't until a couple years ago that I decided to play regularly, because I mean, previous to that I was just kind of doing yoga at home and going to the gym. I loved being outside. LA is a great place to play tennis, and it's a great team. It's a team called Queen Anne. I got into tennis thanks to my friend Jonathan Guarano. We met each other at an event in LA, and we discovered that we both like playing tennis and decided to meet up and play tennis. And we did that, and we tried to do it fairly regularly, and at some point there was a coach on this team who was at the rec center that we played at, and he peeked his head through the fence, and he was like, hey, we do like these weekly tennis clinics with free coaching every week on, I think it was at that point, it was like maybe Tuesday nights, I can't remember, Tuesday nights. And he's like, you should come by. For a while I was like, okay, and I didn't really work my schedule, wasn't sure about this tennis clinic thing he was talking about. And then eventually I was like, you know what, I would like to get better at this game, because I was playing with my friend, and like, of course you get a little bit better just by doing it more, but just by playing it more. But I was like, you know what, it would probably help to get some instruction, some coaching, and this place is like, he said it was free, and I was like, what do I have to lose? It's at the place I come regularly anyway. It's pretty close to my place. Might as well check it out. Ever since I went to that first practice, I was just like, I love this. I love doing tennis drills. I love meeting other women who play tennis, and it was just a cool, fun, casual atmosphere. And then they in fact did help me with my technique. Now I compete in matches in the league and have captained a team late last year. It's just been so fun. Yeah, so that's my little tennis backstory. There's a season where it's mixed doubles tennis. We had a mixed doubles practice, and the next day I just made this beat. And I guess I was feeling really competitive from the tennis playing that I'd been doing, and just feeling good about how I played. Yeah, I was feeling like a little bit aggressive. So this beat came out. I'm sorry, I have burps again. This time it's tea, yogi tea with ashwagandha and something else. What was I saying? So I made the beat at home, and I added vocals a few days later after making the beat. I was really into the beat. I thought it was not like the other stuff I'd made. Got really excited about it. I was playing around with ChatGPT at the time. I was starting to use it to inspire lyrics, and I really liked what it came up with. It wasn't perfect, and I definitely tweaked a lot of the words and deleted some stuff and like reworked what it gave me, but it was a really good starting point. For instance, I'm looking at the original generated lyrics right now, and an example of what it gave me and what I changed was like, one of the lines was in verse 2, with my words I'm unstoppable, so inspirational. It's a bit cheesy, and I changed that to with my words I bring it like a missionary, because the previous line was I'm a trendsetter, I'm a visionary. So yeah, those two lines, I changed it to be like, I'm a trendsetter, true visionary. With my words, I bring it like a missionary is what I changed it to. I tweaked some lyrics, but I did like what it came up with. And I remember when I generated the lyrics, I was like, this is so funny. Lyrics are pretty straightforward and like somewhat basic lyrics. I remember I'm like, just for fun, I'm going to just try rapping this on top of the beat I made. And it sort of worked. And that's when I was like, I gotta finish this. You know, I gotta just see it to the end, because it works a little too well for me to just like leave it there and like abandon it. And so I was like, at that point I had pretty much committed. I'm like, I'm gonna finish this song. Whether I'm gonna release it, I don't know, but I'm gonna definitely finish it. I think I did come up with the full lyrics of the song pretty quickly, like within a matter of days. Maybe the second verse, it took me a little bit longer to rewrite some of it. I would say the second verse is definitely more originally written by me than the first verse, which I wanted to do because I did want to make at least part of the song a little bit more personal, you know? So, you know, there are some lines in there about my previous career, very small callback to my previous career before I went into making music. So for those of you who don't know, I used to be a software engineer. I finished the lyrics to the song pretty quickly, and then it was just a matter of recording some good takes. Another couple lines that it generated was like the very last two lines in the outro. And I'm not going to stop. I'm always on the rise with my rhymes and my flow. I'll conquer the skies was the original generator. I updated those last two lines. What it ended up being was, I'm not going to stop. I'm always on the rise with my rhymes and my flow. You can look me in the eyes. I changed that last part. I asked it to generate a few different verses. And I basically picked out phrases that I liked and sort of mashed them together in a way that I thought fit well in terms of the song. I had it continue writing another verse because it had generated like two verses, which I thought like some parts of it I liked and some I didn't. So I was like, continue writing. So this is the whole verse 3 that it generated. I started from the bottom. Now I'm at the peak. They used to doubt me. Now they all want to speak. I've overcome struggles. I've faced adversity, but I never backed down. I kept my integrity. I'm a hustler. I grind till I can't no more. Every obstacle I face, I break down the door. I'm a game changer. I'm rewriting the rules. I'm the heavyweight champ. No one can refuse. There's little parts of those phrases that I did end up keeping in the song, but as you could tell, I got rid of quite a bit as well. For me, this song is a few different things. It's about being a champion and about being a winner. And part of that is defining what does it mean to win. To me, winning is never giving up. To me, winning has nothing to do with the score or the points, but it means never giving up. If you don't give up, you've won. In my opinion, that makes you a winner. If you keep going, assuming that you want to keep going. I think there's some things that you consciously decide that it's no longer something that you want to do anymore, as in like you have no desire to, maybe it's not for you, maybe it's not serving you, then you decide to stop. And that's totally fine. But for things that you love and that bring you joy, even in the moments where there are obstacles and maybe you failed, quote unquote, failed something, you made a mistake, you did something, there was a blunder, it's never a perfectly smooth path. Anytime you come across those things, you keep going. To me, you're winning when you do that. And so that's what this song is about. Definitely partially inspired by the tennis that I was playing, just playing sports, being competitive. But also, I worked a little bit of essentially the music career, or just the careers that I've had in my life so far, of which now there have been two. My first career was in software engineering, and now I'm in the music industry, making music. Part of it is about that, about like never giving up on the things that you love to do as well, outside of like the sports context. Another interesting point of this journey or the story is that in like fall of last year, I had a wrist injury from tennis. I was both playing too much tennis. I was also not conditioning or strength training my body in between the times that I was playing tennis. And I believe that's what caused this wrist injury. It was minor. Thankfully, is like nothing broke or anything. It was just kind of like a tendon-related overuse injury. And that was my first injury like that of any kind. It was fairly minor, but I've been fortunate to be pretty healthy my entire life. And so this is my first time actually having an injury where it affected everyday things that I was trying to do. It affected me putting on my makeup, sometimes brushing my teeth, eating with utensils, like lifting chairs, moving things around, have like larger heavy objects, moving them in a certain way. It would like hurt my wrist to the point where like I wouldn't want to do it, or I would like adjust the way I did it so that my wrist didn't hurt. And I know in the grand scheme of things, it was a minor wrist injury. And I've definitely had other injuries. I had an injury from like a road bike accident once where I just had like a giant gash in my knee and had like stitches, and I was on crutches for like a month or maybe a little more. So I've had injuries before, and they're always a humbling experience because they remind you of what capability you previously used to have and now no longer do, whether it's temporary or permanent. It's taken away from you, at least temporarily, and you're just like, oh, like I miss the ability that I had to do this without pain. So that was a humbling experience. It also introduced me, and I tried for the first time, physical therapy. It was my first time ever needing physical therapy and going to a physical therapist. Sandkit, if you're watching this, what's up? He was my PT, and he was awesome, and I went to him for a couple months, and afterwards have not had any wrist issues. So he did an amazing job, because I remember my first visit, when it was like, I guess the consultation or just checking out my wrist and seeing what was going on, he was like, what are your goals with PT? And I was just like, well, I want to understand why this happened to my wrist, and I would like to get it to a point where it never happens again. I would hate for this to be like a recurring thing that just like came back every time I play tennis. I would love to just keep playing tennis without having wrist pain, you know? And that's essentially what happened. After going to visit him for like a couple months, once every week or two for a couple months, and then doing the wrist exercises that he gave me over the course of the 2 months, my wrist fortunately strengthened enough to the point where it stopped hurting. And I think I'm also trying to be better about like keeping in good shape between the times I play, and like making sure I strength train certain areas, especially if I'm starting to feel pain, and like resting them and learning so much about my body. Also, around that time, this was like late summer, early fall, I also got COVID. So it's funny because I was like working on this song called Unstoppable. At that point, I had written and recorded all the lyrics, and I had the beat. And now I was just like mixing and mastering it. And while I was doing this for a song called Unstoppable about never giving up, I couldn't play tennis because of this wrist injury. And then I also got COVID for the first time ever and had to isolate for 10 days or whatever. And it was I would say it was like a moderate version of COVID. I definitely had the flu, high fever for like a few days, and I just felt awful, but then obviously had to isolate for like more than a week. That was a humbling experience as well. And the irony of it was hilarious to me because I'm working on this song about never giving up and how great I am and all this stuff, and then health issues happen, you know? I can't play tennis anymore, or at least for the time being, and I'm just like essentially bedridden at home, just not doing anything and feeling pretty useless. So that was great. But fortunately, like most, if not all things, that was a temporary phase. And eventually my wrist injury, I healed that. And then I also got past COVID and was feeling back to normal again, thankfully. And also during this time, while I was sick with COVID and having the wrist injury, I kind of took a break from mixing and mastering it because I didn't really want to be in like super work mode, and I wasn't feeling up to sitting at my workstation for long periods of time because of COVID. But what I was cool with was playing with the artwork, and I used AI to help me with that. I used a combination of Dall-E and Runway for both the cover art and some of the like real sort of animated visuals that I had for that song of me on this modified tennis court in space. What inspired that? I remember the prompt that I used for generating the artwork was something like a tennis court floating in space. And I noticed that the court that it created, the lines on the court were not accurate. It was just kind of like doing some random lines, or like it was like a grid of lines. It wasn't an accurate tennis court. But the rest of it looked like a tennis court. Sometimes it wasn't. Sometimes the net was like giant, and sometimes the net was like way too short. So I was like, how am I gonna do this? I thought I could Photoshop these lines so that they're more accurate. It seemed like a lot of tedious work. And so I decided, I was like, you know what, why don't we just get rid of the lines? I think people will know that it's a tennis court without the lines, like just seeing the color of the court and the net and the fact that like I'm going to be serving on it. And also I kind of liked the idea of like the lines don't really matter. Yeah, I know that for when you're playing a match, just the lines matter and you're trying to hit them in, but like, do the lines really matter? We made up the lines, you know what I mean? Obviously the whole sport is made up, but like there's something about like not caring about where the lines are and just playing and just hitting the ball. There's something about that I really liked, and I thought it would make for like a simpler visual, like a cleaner visual anyway. And AI wasn't working with me on the tennis court lines, so plus it's a court out in space. Maybe like tennis in the year whatever, when we're out in space, maybe they don't have lines anymore, you know. Why did I think of a tennis court out in space? Tennis, as well as maybe all or most sports, is, I feel like, 90% a mental game. It doesn't really matter where you are. The game is in your head. You know, like you're playing the game in your head. The outcome in the game is in your head. It's like, it could have been a professional stadium. It could have been on an island. It could have been in the desert. There's so many places. I guess something about putting out in space, because sometimes it feels like that's where your head is or needs to be at in this game. I don't know if I'm explaining myself effectively right now. I'm probably going to keep like 10% of what I'm saying in the final cut. Okay. Another interesting point in this story of Unstoppable is I also connected with my friend Brennon, who is a talented drummer and also has his own clothing refresh service where he will bleach or tie-dye clothing to refresh them and make them look amazing. He'll like refresh any kind of garment that you have, where there's like maybe something in your closet you haven't worn in a while, but you want to give it like a new life. He's amazing at it. His service or brand is called Buckettt, with 3 T's at the end. In addition to the clothing magic that he does, he also is a talented drummer. And we met at a show in LA that we both attended. Yeah, we connected after that show, and I saw something he posted on IG of him drumming. We had like a brief exchange on IG about one of the beats that he posted. We decided to like get together and have like a sort of like a mini session where he could like help me with some beats or just kind of explore, because he has like I think it's a Roland like electronic kit. And yeah, so he came over one day. I showed him the songs that I was working on, and Unstoppable was one of them. And he had some great ideas for like essentially like the tom fill that happens towards the end of the beat. I really dug it, and I kept it, and I mixed it into the final track. And so thank you, Brennon, for being awesome and for helping out with like the little flourishes and stuff on my beats. He is also credited on the song as like a co-drum programmer, but I don't know why it doesn't appear on Spotify. I don't know how those things translate over. Like, yeah, I feel like there's some fields that you can add credit for, and then they just don't appear on Spotify. It's so strange. Anyway, okay, another interesting thing that happened during the journey of Unstoppable was I submitted it for release on August 7th. I had already submitted it on DistroKid, and then I just kept listening to the master, and I kind of like tweaked some master. I basically submitted it and then decided that I wasn't fully done because I just like kept tweaking the master. But I got to this point where I was like, oh, I really like this master version. So in the previous episode of Behind the Song, I talk about the cycle of master versions. That was for If We Wanted, which I worked on after the song. So this song, I definitely went through way too many iterations of the master. I think this song I did like 16 to 20 or something. And yeah, it was a lesson for me that I shouldn't be doing that many master versions. But anyway, lesson learned. I ended up aborting the release, which just means that you like retract the release. You're like, never mind, like cancel it. It's my first time ever doing that. But I decided to do that for this song because I did feel that I had reached a master version that was significantly better than the one I submitted. I don't want to get in the habit of like aborting my releases. It's kind of a pain. Like on one hand, it's not that big a deal. Like you can abort releases and it's not like there's like a penalty or anything. And the song wasn't released yet, so it's not like I had to like remove it from stores and then like, you know, it didn't get that far in the process. It was like pretty early. But I still don't want to get in the habit of doing that. I want to be able to like submit. Once I submit the song, I'm like really feeling really good about it and not feeling like I need to make it significantly better or whatever. So anyway, I resubmitted the song almost a month after I first submitted it in September. And then I started working on the music video for it, which is on YouTube. And it's essentially me performing the song in my living room. I used CapCut to edit it, and it was my first time playing around with the filters on CapCut. I've used CapCut in the past to do video edits, just very basic like cropping, trimming clips, you know, reordering clips, cutting stuff out and stuff like that, and putting audio here and there, like inserting an image and stuff. But for some reason I never really played with the filters or like the effects that it had until this video. So that was a lot of fun. And I was really surprised by how much I was able to do with just CapCut filters, to be honest. Also, something that I had tried with this video, which I thought was kind of a hack, was, so I don't know if you could tell, but like in the video, it's kind of like zooming in and out a lot. The song has a little bit more energy behind it, and I wanted to match that energy as much as possible in the video. And it was just me filming myself, so I didn't have a camera person to like do the motions of like moving the camera around or anything. So I essentially hacked that in, or just like simulated it in post by adding motion to the camera. And hold on a second. So the hack or the trick I used to do this was I essentially used my iPhone to re-record the video that was playing on my phone, and then using my fingers to like zoom in and out of the recorded video to like essentially simulate like a zoom. But because I was using my fingers, I think it felt a little bit more natural, like it looked like somebody was actually doing it. Kind of, not totally, but kind of. You could tell the computer to like zoom in, zoom out. Like you could probably use like Adobe Premiere or something. I had tried a little bit. I had tried to do some zoom in, zoom out effects, but it just wasn't the same. It just looked too like generated, you know what I mean? It just looked too static. It just wasn't what I had in mind. So I was like, okay, I actually have full control over my fingers zooming in and out. So that's what I did. And actually, I mean, it did it to a pretty like decent extent. Obviously, it's not the same as like an actual camera person moving the camera around. For, I guess, the resources I had at the time and what I did have available to me, I thought I did a decent job with it. I really enjoyed making the MV, and it was just really fun to explore making a video like this just completely by myself, just to see how far could I get by myself in my living room. I definitely had ideas involving tennis in this video. I had these visions of like potentially involving my tennis team, having a full-on videographer, get us on the courts, doing some like maybe like mini choreographed stuff, a sunny day outside on the courts or something. Like I had these ideas and I tried looking for a videographer to help me with this. It was surprisingly hard for me to find somebody to do this. Maybe a future second music video will come out for the song, but I ended up just deciding, I'm like, you know what, I'm just gonna not overthink this and just record a video of me like rapping to it. And I wanted to play around with the tools that I had, so that's what happened and that's what came out. There is also another thing that I wanted to talk about during the journey of the song. I have to say that for like 1 to 2, maybe even 3 months, I don't know exactly how long, but maybe around that amount of time, I struggled with the idea of releasing this song strictly because of the content of the lyrics. I grappled with the fact that I felt these lyrics were like self-centered, egocentric, egotistic, braggy, like big-headed a little bit. On one hand, I thought it was like a cool self-empowerment song, but on the other hand, I know there's a couple lines in there that's like, I'm the best in the game. And I was like, I'm not trying to like put down other people. That's not my intention. You sort of have to tell yourself you're the best in the game to be better, to believe in yourself. And also definitely a departure in terms of mood and also like content of the lyrics than everything else I have out right now. And part of me grappled with that. And part of me was like, oh gosh, what are people going to think when they hear this braggy, I'm the best in the game, I'm a champion sort of song? I was really struggling with that. It was definitely fun to do. But I was like, I just don't know about the content of these lyrics and just like the idea behind the song. Like I had really mixed feelings about it because there were parts of it that I was really proud of and that I liked. And there were other parts of it that I was like, do I really want to put this out there for everyone to hear? Oh yeah, and also I just remembered that this also happened. There was a point where I was doing something with the music video for it, and I just remember that my like electricity or my internet just shut down, like right as I was like posting something for it. I can't remember if it was the music video or like a reel or something on social media. Honestly, I was like, wait a second, is this a sign from the universe that I shouldn't put this song out? I was literally taking it so seriously, and I usually, like, sometimes I acknowledge that there are some coincidences that I'm like, wow, this seems like it's a sign. You know, I'm not a huge believer in signs, but there have been times where I thought that maybe something was a sign, you know? I don't take everything as a sign, but this time I was like, wait a second, I'm trying to post this and like, what are the odds that like my internet just like shuts down? I was just like, what are the odds? And I really examined myself and I was like, do I really want to put this song out? I definitely spent a significant amount of time thinking about it after that event. And I finally came to the conclusion for myself. I was like, you know what? I'm going to honor that that's how I felt, or that was like the self-expression I had in that moment. And it doesn't mean that that's how I feel all the time. It doesn't mean that every line of that is permanently like part of who I am at all times. I'm just trying to honor that moment of self-expression. Something that's really important to me is just being true to myself as much as I possibly can. I guess on one hand, I was like, okay, I could not put it out. I have done all this work for it and around it, and I could just not put it out. But that wouldn't be honoring my expression. It's done, it's finished. I'm proud of many parts of it. It would be disingenuous to not put it out. And then on the other side, it's like, yeah, I put it out. Maybe there's parts of that I'm like, oh, a little uncomfortable putting it out. A little uncomfortable people listening to some of the content of the song. But at least I like put it out there rather than just completely hiding it. And so I chose this path where, I chose this path where I didn't just keep it to myself and I shared it. Even if there were parts of it that I was like, I don't know. And I'm really glad I did. I'm really glad that I'm not sitting on it still, wondering whether I should put it out. I'm glad that I didn't decide to not put it out and then like sometimes, occasionally being like, should I have put it out? You know what I mean? Like, I'm glad that it's just out and it's like, it's done. And I still enjoy listening to it sometimes. I definitely have to be in a certain mood to listen to it, but I just love that I made it and I love that it's out there. I did want to include this part of the journey because it was an important part of this journey. This was a unique part of the journey of this song, spending so much time and really grappling mentally with the idea of like, maybe I shouldn't put it out. And I think it's important for me to share this with all of y'all because as creators, whether you create or not, almost all of us create in some capacity. It may not be music, but it's usually something. It may not even be art, but you probably create in other capacities, even if it's not art. And I think it's very common for us to second guess what we made or sharing it and like, what will people think? I think that's a common thing we all go through. And I just wanted to share that I also go through that. And I went through that significantly with this specific song. So for those of you who have listened to the song, thank you for listening to it. And I hope you enjoyed listening to it. I really enjoyed making it. And I also grappled with possibly not putting it out, but I'm glad I did. So that more or less is the story and the journey of that song. I really appreciate you watching and being interested in this content. If you liked it, if you want to see more behind the songs, please let me know, publicly, privately, whatever, comment, subscribe, share, all that stuff. I'm gonna keep burping my tea out and see you in the next one. Bye!